All right, hello and welcome to the agenda on Dominion Brokers Group this morning. Lovely Wednesday morning in the Brown Roof City of Ibadan. I am Chike Ubogu. All right, on the agenda this morning, let's get serious. The crisis over the control of local government councils in Osun State between the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressives Congress has boiled over, with the state government dragging the federal government to the Supreme Court for allegedly seizing the monthly allocations accruing to the councils. Osun State local government allocations for the months of February, March and April 2025 are reportedly withheld, while that of May has not yet been determined. Well, the suit dated 23rd April 2025 marked SC/CV/379/2025 filed by Musibao Adetumbi, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, counsel for the Attorney General of Osun State, who is a plaintiff, has the Attorney General of the Federation as the sole defendant. The state government approached the Supreme Court for an order directing the federal government to release the seized funds and for further orders restraining it from further withholding, suspending, and for seizing funds allocations to funds that were allocated to the local government councils in the state. Well, reacting to this, Robert Clark, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, has said that the problem with the local government area financial autonomy is that it's highly politicized. Well, governors make significant amounts of money from local government funds, and yielding what they are holding onto now without legal backing will be challenging. He further went to say that any slight flaw in the disbursement of funds will be exploited. Let's get to listen to Robert Clark this morning.
Problem on local government, as you rightly pointed out, is a political, highly political, because as we all know, all governors make a lot of money from local funds. Now, to yield what they are holding on now, without definitive legal backing, will be very difficult. Any slight flaw that can be observed by any politician in the disbursement of this money will be taken up on. It is their characteristic. So why are you afraid or that it will never be possible, or why are you afraid that it should not be challenged? Which is your fear? Is your fear because somebody is challenging, because there is no provision for it yet? Then let him go and challenge, so that a specific provision will be made in the original declaration of the Supreme Court. And I think that
All right, welcome back from there. You listen to Robert Clark, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Well, indicting governors. Well, joining me in the studio this morning is our in-house analyst, Charles Dolapo Anjorin. Welcome on board the agenda today.
Good morning, Mr. Chike. It's my pleasure to be here again this morning.
Well, we'll be talking about this local government autonomy of a thing, and then, well, you saw, or you are following what is playing out in Osun State at the moment,
yeah,
where
absolutely.
the state has taken the federal government to court,
yes.
and the Attorney General of the Federation representing the federal government. Well, many have said they've been waiting for a day when a state will take the government to court on this local government autonomy. However, the Osun State government is not even challenging the autonomy. It's challenging the seizure of funds for February, March, April. The month of May has not even been determined at the moment. So what's your take again, because we keep discussing this issue on this local government autonomy. Now, the lacuna in the Constitution, especially Section 162, subsection 789 of that Constitution, would always come to bear, you know, when people start talking about this, when we keep discussing this local government autonomy of a thing, financial autonomy for local government areas. Osun State has gone to court. Your take on this?
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, we need to give a background context to what has happened in Osun State. You would recall that in 2022, when the former governor of Osun State, Governor Adegboyega Oyetola, you know, conducted an election. You know, the PDP boycotted the election, and there is a court order that invalidated that election. In the same vein, the All People's Party, APP, also got a similar judgment, you know, nullifying the election that Adegboyega Oyetola, you know, conducted. So now, fast forward, local government election, yeah. Yes. So fast forward to 2025, the PDP lost at the appeal court, you know, which the appeal court said their case lacks merit. So the APC I don't want to say misinterpret, interpreted, you know, that judgment for their own local council chairman, you know, to take over the local government councils and, you know, posts, you know, in Osun State, across the 30 local government that we have. Now, having done that, Governor Deleke, you know, cautioned that there is an existing court judgment that still nullifies the election of 2022 that was carried out by Gboyega Oyetola. You know, that, like I said earlier, the it was the All People's Party, you know, that got that court judgment. And the governor of Osun State went ahead against the advice of the Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi, to conduct another election on February 22nd of 2025, you know, backed by a declaration by the state high court. Now, the PDP won fair and square, won all the local governments chairman seats, 30 local governments. They won 330 council seats across Osun State. So now, because of this, the APC at least felt, okay, we can use federal might, allegedly, actually, allegedly to have influence, you know, using federal might, you know, to try to, you know, subvert what happened in Osun State. And that is number one. Then it also have, as you know, different judicial rulings, you know, conflicting rulings. But the Constitution is very clear. Most especially, there's a Supreme Court precedent, you know, where you have AGF versus AG Abia. You know, that ruling actually granted full financial autonomy to local governments. You know, one of the legs that the prayer before Supreme Court, you know, that there is no way the appeal courts, you know, will rule against a subsisting judgment. The Federal High Court has given their own judgments. The appeal court, you know, gave theirs. But this Constitution is very clear, most especially in Section 162. If you go down and focus on subsection 368, Adeleke-led PDP feel that they have justification that they should the seizure of the local government funds, you know, should not exist.
Well, if you look at that again, for a democracy, a nascent democracy, you want to ask again, is this a repetition of what happened in 1999, during the days of Olusegun Obasanjo and Tinubu in Lagos, where the funds given to Tinubu were not even enough, and at some point it was stopped. And then Tinubu had to think out of the box. Is it high time Osun State? This could be a blessing in disguise if they could think outside the box and generate more money for the state instead of depending on federal allocation.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for them if they can think outside of the box, if they can be creative enough to be able to sustain themselves, you know, away from the local government funds. You know, the local government funds that comes in to every state, the governors are actually in charge of these funds. So they use it, you know, as they will. So, like what we watched on TV, what's the name of the man? The senior advocate of Nigeria,
Robert
Clark, you know, as he was saying, you know, governors use this as their personal funds. So in a way, they also use it as political patronage. They also use it for projects. So when you look at the size of Osun State, they don't really generate much IGR, even though they have mineral resources, which they are not entitled to, you know, mine, because mining is still under the exclusive list of the federal government. What they equally have again is the federal allocation account. So if you are taking out the local government's allocation away from their funds, it's going to impact greatly on what they have actually budgeted for. And when you look at the whole scenario, you like I said earlier, it also has a political coloration. 2026 is coming, and you know that for you to win any election, grassroots is actually critical. It is key. So you need to take a foothold at the grassroots. So this is why you see the jostling, the fighting between, we are the ones in charge of the local government, we are not the ones in charge of the local government. Already, don't forget that 8 lives have been lost, including the life of a chairman, in this tussle. So when you put it side by side together, you see that this is one of the biggest problems that is actually plaguing our federal system of government. You know, it is a major weakness because you have so much power concentrated at the center. And this is why we also argue for restructuring, that local government should be allowed to generate their own funds. If we don't restructure properly, there is no way local government will be able to generate their own funds. And if local government is able to generate their own funds, there is no way that this power at the center will seize their allocation.
Is it not high time we look inwards and say, okay, enough of all this? Like we also proceeded. We've been championing the cause for restructuring, especially when it comes to the federating units. Most of these federating units that we have today cannot fend for themselves, especially when it comes to internally generated revenue. So is it not high time we say enough is enough? Disintegrate these things into 6 major regions and have 6 governors and let these people start, you know, taking care of themselves, fending for themselves, and then maybe contribute a tenth or a quota to the central government.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say. You're trying to like mirror what happened in 1963, from the 1963 constitution, wherein we became a republic, and you know, you have regional autonomy, where you have justice, you have the police, you know, under the purview of the regional governments. Yes, it's good we can do that. In the past, we've had so many constitutional conferences. As I can recall, I know we had the recent confab in 2013-2014. We had another one in 1997, you know, where Nigeria was actually divided into 6 geopolitical zones. So there are reports from these different conversations. So why are we not dusting the reports and let us see what works for 2025 so that we can implement it and, you know, decentralize Nigeria? A lot of things that are on the exclusive list, on the concurrent list, you know, needs to also be moved down to the residual list, which belongs to the local government. So take as an instance, primary health care is still under the purview of the exclusive list of the federal government. Local governments, you know, automatically should be in charge of primary health care centers, PHCs. So these are, these are the issues. Even though the exclusive list and the concurrent list, the federal government and the state government, both share the responsibility of of that is, because don't forget that state also has their own general hospital. Federal government also has federal teaching hospitals too. So why not devolve that aspect? Allow local government to manage PHCs. And you also have the issue of the electoral umpire. Don't forget that the reason why the election was initially nullified in 2022 was because OSEC did not adhere to the Electoral Act of 2022. Most especially the section that says that you give 360-day notice before you conduct an election. So now you have a state body conducting an election, and the opposition is not having confidence, in that state's electoral body. So why not take that responsibility away from State Independent Electoral Commission? Then, if you want to give it to INEC to oversee, let INEC oversee the elections into local governments, council areas. In the past, local government elections, used to be the main thing, whereby you look forward to it. It's like a competition. But now, once a party wins a state, automatically it means that the party will be the ones winning all the local government seats in the state. So
it's looking like a selective election.
Exactly.
Not election, but it's selection.
Yeah, it's a selection. Yes, it is not an election, it's a selection. They just use State Independent Electoral Commission, to just perpetuate the selection process.
Well, some will say, well, a sitting governor would not want opposition to be.
And that is not democracy. The beauty of democracy is to have different divergent views, is to have political actors coming into the stage, to preach their manifestos, tell us what you are going to do better at the grassroots level, and let people at the grassroots level make their choices. But because election is now a do or die affair in Nigeria, so it is winner takes all.
Winner takes all. Well, I hope we'll be able to get to a point where it will be a restructured entity and all Nigerians will then enjoy or benefit the dividends of democracy. Well, let's take a look at Nigeria's trade in the international market. After this break, stick around, don't go away. All right, welcome back from that break. Let's take a look at the Nigeria's trade in the international market. Our imports are predominantly manufactured goods, from vehicles, pharmaceuticals, electronics, machinery, processed foods, and materials, just to name a few. And our exports, which gives about 90% of the revenue, is crude oil, and also some raw agricultural crops such as cocoa, cashew nuts, and maybe sesame. Observing from this pattern, mix changes and volatility in the oil price expose us to economic vulnerabilities. And aside, it limits our productive output as a nation with immense resources that can make our economy buoyant and viable in the 21st century. Well, the benefits of Nigeria, especially processing raw materials and manufacturing finished goods for exports, should include the tendencies of fetching the government and businesses involved in such endeavor high prices, which inevitably will increase export earning significantly. Also, there will be an increase in the job market when we begin to manufacture our own goods. This significant unemployment rate in Nigeria, according to statistics, may not reflect the actual ratio, as many Nigerians without jobs resort to self-employed status just to get by. When we begin manufacturing, then there will be tremendous growth in jobs in fields of agriculture, engineering, sales, and production. Our country will also gain technological transfers, making us contributory to fields of science, research, and technology around the world. Well, our balance of trade, which essentially means having sufficient exports as the same with imports, will cause the naira to appreciate in value. Well, this will bring better purchasing power and respect for the currency. Dolapo, we're talking about exports, import, balance of trade for Nigeria, and it still takes us back to the issue of restructuring too, directly or indirectly, anyway, which way. How can this government or any government coming into power think outside the box, think holistically? How do you think they should strategize to make this possible? In other words, how can Nigeria transform from a developing nation to a developed nation, from a consuming nation to a producing nation? When you look at the Asian tigers, Singapore, China, Thailand, how do we transportify into this? Can't we be the giant of Africa that we claim to be, which some have posited that the GI is missing in the giant at this moment?
So if the GI is missing, it means that we are just an ants.
You said it?
Yes, that's
you said
what
it?
Yes, I said it.
Okay.
Ants.
Okay.
But even ants, they have wisdom.
They work hard too.
They work hard too. They gather.
They secure their future.
Yes, they secure their future. They work hard. Gather their food, store in a place, so that when when the season comes, that they won't be able to go out of their heels. They will have something to fall back on. So I think the country can actually borrow wisdom. Even from as small as an ant is, Nigeria can actually, borrow wisdom from them before we actually become other GI and, we become that giant. When you look at our economy, we have the fourth largest GDP in Africa.
Okay, so that's where I wanted you to start from there. I knew you were coming there. But you see, when we say we have the fourth largest GDP in Africa, and then you ask yourself a question, is this figure on paper or in reality? How can a nation that is predominantly a consuming nation grow its GDP? Do we grow our GDPs in our stomach based on stomach infrastructure? Or what is it? Because some of these figures are really not in tandem with what is on ground.
On ground.
Exactly.
Yeah, I quite agree with you. Take as an instance, Morocco as a nation. When you look at the African Infrastructural Development Index, they score a high point of about 70%. But on the other hand, Nigeria also score an abysmal 24%. And Morocco, Nigeria has a higher GDP than Morocco. So it means that in terms of infrastructural development, Morocco is actually ahead of us, even though with a lower GDP. So this is to actually buttress your point, that it doesn't matter whether you have a high GDP, it doesn't also translate into automatic development. So what are we trying to say? What am I trying to say here is, it is important to look at what is actually contributing to your own nominal GDP. How have you been able to, expand your GDP in such a way that you would have massive infrastructural development, in such a way that you'll be able to, take advantages, in the tech industry? How have you been able to reduce the unemployment digits in your country? How have you been able to beat down the constant inflation, eating up people's take home every month? So you look at your imports, you look at your exports. Switzerland imports about 52,000 tons of cocoa. every year. But they export technology worth of 110,000 10,000 worth of exports every other year. You can see that their exports is actually greater than their imports. So take as an instance, if we import cosmetics for $10 and you export cocoa for $15, the $5 difference is your net exports. The $5 is going back to your FX reserve. So we must seek to achieve what we call net exports. That is how that's how you become you take your developing economy to a developed one. Importation is not really bad at all. The most developed countries on the surface of the earth, they are importing. China is importing, in fact, if not the nation that imports the most on the surface of the earth.
Yeah, but you see, importation is not the problem.
It's not the problem.
However, when you depend solely on imports, your country consumes. For example, if you go to the Tinkan port, Marina in Lagos,
Marina, yes.
If you get to Marina in Lagos, and then you see vessels, you see ferries bringing things into the country, and when they are going out empty. So meaning that they're not taking anything away from the country. The only thing, basically 90% of our export is from crude oil. The remaining 10% is shared amongst some agricultural products, cocoa, cashew, maybe sesame, and a few others. So when you look at it that way, and then you say the youths are highly unemployed, the room for production, you have issues of power, because when there's power, when you fix power in a country, production will become stable. So how do we surmount these challenges?
You see, surmounting these challenges is not rocket science. We need to begin to diversify. We are too fixated on the golden goose, coming from the South region, which is not very good. The world is moving away from crude gradually. It's phasing out. Look at Qatar. I've made that examples on this program so many times. Qatar was doing 1.2 million barrels of crude oil, almost the same output as Nigeria. Today, Qatar is not even, they are not even majoring on refining of crude oil again. They are now into gas, non-associated gas and associated gas. They are producing 110 million metric tons of gas on every year. Nigeria is struggling with 20 million tons of non-associated gas, despite having over 200 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. We are actually sitting beneath what is actually worth more than gold in this studio, but we have not been able to harness it properly. More than half of that 200 trillion cubic feet of gas is non-associated gas. So, and the world is actually looking out for it, because you cannot satisfy the demand. Look at the AKK projects. It has been abandoned. What is Nigeria doing? Nigeria is saying that we should still go to our frontier basins to still try to carry out seismic tests to explore for more crude oil, when you can actually, take advantage of the large deposit of natural gas in the north, an energy source that can power more than 10 million homes, that can also generate effects into the Nigerian economy, because you have the Trans-Sahara gas pipeline. You can, harness the energy and also export the gas abroad.
Is it that we have leaders that are intellectually lazy when it comes to policies that would emancipate Nigeria from the doldrums? is that we have such leaders in the corridors of power? Or do we have leaders who are after selfish interests? Not that they're intellectually lazy, or maybe they know what to do, but they just want to do for themselves, not to serve the people.
I think we are not short of people who are very smart, you know, as leaders in this country. I just think they just lack vision.
Vision, meaning
Yes.
that they don't see.
They don't see.
They don't see the future.
They don't see the future. They just
So our
they
leaders
just
are
lack-
not prophetic.
They don't see the future. They just lack vision. You know, they are just so fixated on what is coming out from the Niger Delta, the immediate.
Now,
Now.
that- about the noun syndrome.
Yes. So, and you know, most of this money coming from the Niger Delta, it even ends up in your much more in your pocket. But we are now seeing another revenue source that can even bring much more money from where you are actually stealing what you are having and where you are stealing from. Why not look at that side? If you want, okay, let us assume that okay, steal, but unless that part of the economy that would bring in foreign reserve.
Why must they steal? If everything
No,
is
I'm not encouraging stealing. I'm just trying to
but if
sound
everything is put
metaphorical
in
a way.
place, if everything is put in place, nobody will think of trying to gather things for him or herself, a loan for his family, or even trying to pay school fees for a kid in the future. You know, nobody will be thinking of that. So somebody who sits down to think of paying advanced school fees of kids in the future, maybe it's the person does not have the interest of the country at heart. The person is only thinking about the now syndrome. The tomorrow ideology is not there.
You see, unfortunately, our population is growing at a faster rate. When you look at our population to GDP, I can't remember the figure now, you find out that there is a very, very urgent need to just look away from an import-driven economy and look towards an export-driven economy. The world is actually moving fast. When you look at countries who have gone through the ruins, who has gone through developmental stage, Singapore was chased out of Malaysia. Look at what Singapore is doing today.
Yeah, especially when you look at what happened between 1962.
Exactly.
When Lee Kuan Yew took over the reins of Singapore and he transformed Singapore. Mind you, Lee Kuan Yew was not 100% perfect. However, Lee Kuan Yew did something. He changed the psyche of Singapore. Singapore became a world power today, from third world to the first world. That is Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew. We need to talk about Lee Kuan Yew one of these days. Lee Kuan Yew, have you seen the book about Singapore, from third world to first world? Have you seen that book? Well, you want to get more of that book? You want to get a copy of that book? Well, you can reach out to me later on. We'll talk about that. You see that book? After reading the book, you understand that there's nothing impossible to do. It's about will, and then you understand what you want.
Having the vision.
Lee Kuan Yew had a vision of a great Singapore. He created the People's Association, People's Assembly.
Yes.
One political party, one language, and said, enough of all this ethnicity, enough of all these tribal sentiments, let us face and build a country of our own, which people in Singapore, Singaporeans today, are enjoying. In Africa, the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, the likes of Banda, the likes of Julius Nyerere, you know, many of them, the likes of
Obafemi Awolowo.
Yes, our own Obafemi Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, even Patrice Lumumba. You know, we had Ralia, that's
Aurelia Odinga.
No, I mean the former president Mandela.
Oh, okay, Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Ralia Mandela. We had people like these who were Pan-Africanists, who were visionaries. Then all of a sudden, there had to be, I don't know what happened. Maybe I ask you, why the decline in visionaries in Africa, that even policies are not as thick as what it should be or what was obtainable in the 50s, 60s, 70s in Africa?
Well, I think there was a slight change of ideology when you look at it. Even, let us even use Nigeria as an example. You have Awo, whose ideal is a democratic socialist ideology. You have Aminu Kano, you have Aminu Kano, you have Nnamdi Azikiwe. These guys are very, very big on their ideologies. Today, you rarely see a Nigerian leader who has been consistent in terms of ideology. I think the only person that comes to mind for me who has been consistent about his ideology, I think, is Atiku Abubakar. You know, for the past 35 years, you know, he's always been talking about restructuring. And he has, for me, he has published about about 5 books, you know, on restructuring. And I think I remember one of his lectures in 2001 or 2003. You know, he gave a lecture on local government. It was that lecture that birthed what we call Association of Local Government of Nigeria today, ALGON. And it is still in existence. So that's an example of, you know, having an ideals and, you know, and you are sticking to that ideals. So it's different. Whether you now deviate away from that ideals, it's actually different. We don't know yet because it hasn't been tested. Earlier in this show, we were talking about local government autonomy. The current president is an advocate of restructuring. He is an advocate of restructuring before he became the president.
We're coming to the current president. Well, myself and Dolapo here have been discussing the prospects of potential, the prospects and even the potentials of Nigeria becoming a nation that benefits from its balance of trade in the international markets, thereby improving the economy of this country and its citizens at large. But now, let me tell you that Nigeria can boost its economy when tech products are made within the country, considering the fact that today we have an influx of young people diving into the tech world. Countries like South Africa, for example, have companies that make aerial vehicles such as drones and have penetrated the digital space. Services such as mobile telephony and digital satellites are exported abroad too, earning big profits. And the South African government, for example, benefits from such investments through taxes and business representation. Well, the question I'll be asking is this government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu formulating policies to make this possible, or has any camp in the opposition proposed a robust agenda? Well, not of lip service, but an actual method that will be implemented so that vision be actualized? Or are we still hoping, renewing our hope day in, day out, week in, week out? Dolapo.
Well, opposition figures in the past, you know, have come out to provide solutions to our economic problems, not only economic problems, even to social problems and political problems too. The current administration are actually performing policies too. You know, you can actually prefer policies, but how effective are your policies? Is it making the lives of your citizenry, is it making it better, or is it making it worse? You know, worse off. You cannot have a population of 250 million, and you know, about 62 to 65% of that population are living in multidimensional poverty. That's not a good report card. So it means that you need to actually look at your policies again, examine it. It is not enough to say that, okay, yes, we have removed fuel subsidies. Yes, fine, fuel subsidies need to go. It is not enough that we need to, you know, bridge the gap in our FX currency. Yes, those are good policies. You know, it's just like, let me liken it this way. We are a nation whereby you have a student who can recite Shakespeare brilliantly, and you also have another student or a child, who learns how to, repair generator and is considered an unserious student. So you have a nation of brilliant students, but you don't have lights. So you understand? So we have people who formulate, brilliant people who formulate these policies, but as beautiful as the policies are, it does not reflect in the life of those people, living in that country. We still have policies that is still, impoverishing our lives. People are still buying essential commodities at an annoyingly expensively amount of money. So when you look at it, inflation is there. Prices of staple foods is still expensive. You still have insecurity in the north. Have we been able to actually fight insecurity to actually provide food security? If you solve the problem of insecurity in the agrarian areas where they are the food basket of the nation, it means you would be solving and also bringing down inflation to the barest minimum. So what is this government's policy on solving insecurity? Yes, we want to establish forest guards, to help dissipate the strength, the
attacks by
herdsmen and bandits. Yes, fine, which is very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
What are the policies? How is it going to work? Have we been able to, reimagine our security architecture?
Like the Chief of Army Staff, who has relocated to Benue State, Katsina Allah, precisely, to go join the troops to fight bandits. So what's the modus operandi? Well, it depends it depends on the military to work out their own modus operandi. But we're looking at policies. So would that stop banditry? Will the Chief of Army Staff move from Borno to Plateau, from Plateau to Taraba?
It is not even,
we have all these pockets of banditry.
It is not even enough for him to relocate, because he won't be there permanently.
So basically, why I brought that up is about policy.
Yes, we have seen former Chief of Army Staff. I can remember Buratai. He moved at some point. He said he moved his base to Maiduguri. He stayed there for how many weeks? He left. Boko Haram still ravaged the region. So it means that there are no good policies in place to actually tackle insecurity.
All right, we just have to go now. We have to go. Well, as we have discussed, the fundamental potential benefits for Nigeria to become an export-driven industrial manufacturing country will include poverty reduction, also improvements in the balance of trade, causing the Naira to appreciate significantly. Today, the Naira is 1,620 Naira. Not a fictional hypothesis, but Naira may become about 90 Naira to $1 because of oil revenue and processed exports. Millions of jobs will be created to skilled and semi-skilled workers. And furthermore, Nigeria will become a high-income country with minimum wages for those working in the workforce to be about $1,500 per month. It's possible. But remember, not everything is a dream. There are nations not far away from our time that did elevate their condition by active political participation and thoughtful visionaries. And even dreams do come true. When envisioned through pragmatic models, they come true. But you know what? We can get there. And we shall get there. Let's keep this conversation going. Do follow us on all our social media platforms. On Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and on YouTube is at Dominion Broadcast. And on the app X is at Dominion Cast. You can also follow us on our website at www.dominion.org.ng. Dolapo Charles Anjorin, thank you for featuring this morning.
Yeah, it's
on
my
the
pleasure,
agenda.
Mr. Toro.
Well, my name is Chike Ubogu. Do have a great day. Stay safe and bye for now.